Well, hello and good evening. As you can see on your screen there, essential tips for buying and driving a car is the webinar tonight from Expats Portugal. On this June the 27th, 2024, you're going to find out a lot about how it is to bring a car to Portugal, how to drive, and what to expect when on the roads here in Portugal. Everything really to do with driving, and a special guest for you a little bit later on, who's going to be our new friend here on the road, helping you locate and source a motor car. Let me just give you a few pointers, just to guide you to get your mind in shape, really, for asking any questions. The things you don't know. So, for example, tonight we'll be looking at the requirements to import your own car into Portugal, the requirements to buy your own car here in Portugal as well, the cost of cars, car leasing, EVs, all important. Electric vehicles, we'll be taking a look at those, and the choice, of course, whether you go with electric, diesel, and automatic or manual, which is obviously a big issue for those coming from the other side of the Atlantic in the United States. Insurance requirements and costs, annual road tax, vehicle safety inspections, driving license requirements, and of course our Q&A at the end to compound your learning this evening, and for you to ask any questions if you need to. So let's meet our presenter tonight, our very own Jerry Lawler. Good evening to you, Jerry.
Thank you very much, Carl. When you mentioned the Silver Coast, I used to think it was called the Silver Coast because everyone who lived there had silver hair. But that's not true, right?
It is true, but I don't know if that's the reason why it's called that.
Okay.
I don't know. Those of you who I see some silver coasters here tonight, you might want to comment on that. So
Whoops.
in no particular order. Good evening to you, Alison and Michael. Debbie's in Coimbra. We've got Laurelyn in Nebraska. Thank you for that update as well. Wondering a lot about how to get a Portugal driver's license and vehicle. So this is absolutely the right webinar for you tonight. Ken's in Angra. Good to see you, Ken. Thanks for being here. George Nielsen, come here if you want to experience summer. All right, there's no need to rub it in. Thank you very much. John is here. John, good to see you in Odivelas tonight. Cassie, still in Indiana. And Thaisa, good evening to you in Olhos d'Água. What a lovely place to be. Christine, as I said, first time here in Florida. You're most welcome, and we'll get back to you and a few more greetings later on, including Joyce Mario, Alicia, and Diana, who's here in Canada this evening as well. So over to you, Jerry, for what I'm sure will be a very informative. You are known as the man to talk to about motoring.
I know.
How did that happen?
I'm a bit worried about that.
How did that happen exactly?
I don't know how that happened, but anyway, we'll give it a go. Okay.
You are the man.
So thanks very much, Carl, and hello and good evening from Central Portugal, everyone. Tonight's webinar is probably, we do this, I think, just about every year, just about every June, we seem to do this. So tonight is an update on what we've done previously. Some things will be repeating because it hasn't changed. Other things will be, there are some updates to look at. A lot of this is generalized. It has to be to get through this, but you're very, very welcome to contact us either tonight or later on via email for your specific questions. So let's make a start. One of the first questions we get asked is it possible to import my own car into Portugal? And the answer is yes, it is, but there are a lot of buts. First thing, the vehicle must be in your name for at least 6 months before moving. If you are not driving the car to Portugal, in other words, if you're thinking about bringing it from North America, for example, the freight costs alone can be very expensive. And if you're coming from the West Coast, that could be double because you've got the journey by road across to the East Coast to get on a ship and so on. So that can be really expensive. The vehicle will then need to meet European standards of conformity and be registered with Portuguese plates. This can be very expensive and in some cases impossible to achieve. Carl, I was listening to your show this morning. I think I heard a horrendous story of someone who brought in a Range Rover from Canada.
It was one of two stories. There was the Range Rover that was eye-wateringly expensive. And if that wasn't bad enough, it was a Lexus that was gifted by a Canadian cousin and sent to Portugal. And you're thinking, my dear cousin, well, how lovely to send me a 22,000 euro vehicle. Very kind. And it was going to cost 4 times that to get it on the road in Portugal. So it had to be sent back.
So it had to be sent back. And it's not the first time I've heard of that, of vehicles having to be sent back.
Yep.
So it can be very expensive. You will also need a range of documents, including a certificate of conformity from the manufacturer, which is not always that easy to acquire. You could be liable for VAT on the Portuguese authorities' valuation of the car, VAT at 23%, and ISV, sales tax, which is unique to Portugal, of up to 10%. So you could have that liability as well. The actual costs are dependent on the model, the age, the specification, and place of manufacture. So there's no table we can give you that says this car will cost this much. You have to tell, you have to explain the details of the car to get a quote. There are some exemptions for classic cars. But then the other thing to think about, if you're bringing a right-hand drive car into Portugal, particularly from the UK or from Ireland or even South Africa, it will be difficult, if not impossible, to sell on that car because nobody will want to buy a right-hand drive car in a left-hand drive country. So give that a serious amount of thought before you decide to do anything, and absolutely check the full costs before making any commitment to ship or drive the vehicle to Portugal. In my view, it's not worth it unless it's an absolutely cherished car, a classic car, something that you can't live without. Otherwise, it's not worth it. It's not worth all the hassle, the aggravation, and most importantly, it's not worth the cost. And it will be a cost. So what about buying in Portugal? Well, first and foremost, I recommend that you always buy from a dealer rather than an unknown private individual. It is possible for Portuguese people to get very long loans on cars here. I've heard up to 25 years. And if you buy a car that has outstanding finance, the law says that you can inherit the finance. There's no easy way to check that a car is finance free unless you're a dealer. The dealers can do that, and the dealers know what they're doing, and they're not going to sell you a car that has outstanding finance. The prices you see will include VAT, but you'll have to bear in mind that there might be an additional fee to register the car, and road tax will be applicable when the existing tax expires. Now, I'll cover those points a little bit later on. The buying process actually is very easy. There's often scope for negotiation on the price, and the key requirements are that you have a NIF and a Portuguese address. You don't actually need to be resident, but you do need to have the NIF and the Portuguese address to buy a car here. Do consider the type of fuel and the miles per gallon performance. The reason being that diesel and petrol or gas is expensive in Portugal, especially when compared with North America. And so you want a car that gives the best performance. And ideally, you want to be sort of climbing up into 40 miles per gallon or something like that, if at all possible. Hybrids and full electric vehicles are becoming more popular. The government have incentivized companies at the start to buy hybrids and electric vehicles. Those cars are now hitting the second-hand market. You're seeing more and more of them. Portugal is very, very favorable towards electric cars and charging facilities and so on. I think when I last looked, there were something like 6,500 charging points across Portugal, which is phenomenally good for the size of the country. And so those are becoming very popular. Consider the size of the vehicle. Carl and I know this from experience, but our roads here can be very narrow. Parking can be difficult. And, you know, we have a lot of medieval towns, and I don't think those towns were built to accommodate a Mercedes or a BMW or whatever it might be that you're trying to negotiate down that street, as Carl and I know only too well from bitter experience.
And laughing passers-by.
I'm sorry?
And laughing passers-by.
And laughing passers-by, waving us on, knowing they were sending us to hell. Yes, I remember that. Yes. And the other thing to bear in mind is that with older cars, automatics, it was a thing in Europe for years that automatics were slow and not the car to buy, and everybody wanted a manual. Um, uh, and that's changed now, but if you're looking for an older car that is an automatic, it can be a challenge. So keep that in mind as well. That doesn't mean they're not around, but they just can be not so easy to find. Don't assume they will be automatic. If I was buying a car in the States, I'd be fairly sure that it would be automatic. In Portugal, it's more likely that it'll be manual unless it states that it's automatic. Insurance. Now, there's some examples of insurance. A small family car, fully comprehensive, 516 euros. A medium car, third party, 216 euros. A large executive car, registered in 2017, 800 euros, fully comprehensive. Just to give you some idea, those are just sample prices. And please don't take them as read. In Portugal, we insure the car, not the driver, which I think is also common in North America. But in other countries, we often insure the driver. So there's a saving to be had there. If two people are sharing a car, you only need one set of insurance. Or indeed, a whole family could share a car. You only need one set of insurance. Rates will be better for drivers who are over 30 with at least 10 years experience and a no claims record. And if you're leaving, well, when you leave your country, if you can get some sort of confirmation from your existing insurance company that you've been insured without a claim for a period of time, that is definitely worth getting and bringing with you and presenting here when you want to get an insurance quote. You can insure third party or third party fire and theft and fully comprehensive. They're all available. Comprehensive insurance, however, is not usually available for cars over 10 years old. And then there are different kinds of comprehensive insurance where you can insure for the full replacement value of the car, which would be more than insuring for a standard replacement. If the car's already 2 years old, you might insure it for the lower value and so on. So there's all kinds of choices to be had in there. The insurance policy will include breakdown recovery in Portugal, at least. It might include it in other countries, but certainly in Portugal, it has to by law. If you have an accident or you break down in Portugal, straight away you call the recovery people and they take care of you. I've even had friends who couldn't get their cars moving from their home, wouldn't start, and they just call their insurance company and they send the breakdown truck and the guy sorts out the car for them. Most insurance will include cover to drive within the European Union and possibly one or two other countries as well, but certainly the European Union will be covered in the policy. So you don't have to stop and question if you want to drive off to Spain or France or whatever, that won't be a problem. And you must carry the insurance certificate in the car. Moving on, road tax. This is the tax for the maintenance of the roads, the upkeep of the roads. It's paid annually. And actually, I have to say that, in my opinion, the roads in Portugal are very well maintained, certainly compared to other countries I've been to recently, where full of potholes and all kinds of things. Portugal is generally speaking, it's pretty good. So the road tax is payable annually from the first date of vehicle registration, and it's payable by the registered owner of the car. The cost will vary depending on the age, the engine size, and the emissions. I have a few examples. A small family car, about 130 euros, a medium one, 146, and a large executive, maybe 225. I would have liked to show you all the tables for all the different combinations, but I would need at least 6 slides to do that. It's so complicated. So we have to check by make and emissions and so on of the car to get the actual cost. But those are the example prices. If the vehicle is registered before 2007, there are lower tax rates. You can make payments online through the finances, and you can visit them, the local town finances office, and make the payment there. And at the moment, vehicles that are 100% electric are actually exempt from IUC. So there's an example of an incentive to buy an electric vehicle. Then you have this IPO vehicle safety certificate, and this is an inspection on the car done periodically to make sure the car is safe, i.e. it checks the brakes, the lights, the emissions, stuff like that. All cars up to 4 years old are exempt. All cars over 4 years of age must have an IPO test for roadworthiness. From 4 to 8 years, that has to be retested every 2 years. And then after 8 years, it must be retested every year. It's very simple. You make an appointment at your local IPO center, and they are prolific. You see them everywhere. It costs about 35 euros for the test. Whoops, sorry. And I just wanted to get back there for 1 second. And the car is tested. If the car fails, then you have to take it away and get whatever bit they've mentioned looked at and fixed, and then go back and have it retested again. Simple. Now, driving license. This one, every time I look at this, it seems to change. So I'm trying to protect myself here and say this is information as of June 2024.
Jerry, maybe you could be more specific.
Yes.
1949 on the 27th.
Thank you, Carla. That's on the recording now. Thank you for that.
And it might change.
Yeah, it might change, yes. Now, if you're an EU or a UK citizen, you can use your existing license until it expires. However, you will need to register the license with the IMT. I'll come back to that. Within 60 days of establishing residence. And before your license expires, you should exchange it for a Portuguese license. And I say that because I think there is a little window where you can still exchange after your license has expired. But once that window has closed, you'll have to take a test. And I don't recommend that you do that. So for the sake of it, and arrange the exchange before your license expires. Now, this little bit about the UK citizen is not currently up to date on the main website in Portugal, but it's an agreement, I think, that the British government made earlier this year with Portugal, so that you can continue to use your existing license until it expires. If you're a citizen of Australia, Canada, USA, or another OECD country, you can drive for up to 185 days, provided you are not a resident. So that's fine. If you become a resident and you're under 60 years of age, you can continue to use your existing license, provided it remains valid, but you should register with IMT to let them know that you're doing that. If you become a resident and you're over 60 years of age, you have 90 days to apply for an exchange license. And that's the rule as it stands at the moment. If you look on the American embassy, you'll see they haven't got that quite right. And I had to challenge that the other day and be told that no, that they've got it wrong. So that's the rule as it stands today, but as it could have changed already, I don't know. To apply for an exchange license, you will need a medical certificate from your doctor, including a sanity certificate. So they'll have to make sure that you are sane, which I think you passed it, didn't you, Carl? I did. I got through.
No one need worry, right?
Yeah. And it's a very straightforward. It's not the medical test is not intrusive or anything. It's just a few questions, and the doctor fills in the form and puts it on the system for you.
Actually, you make a good point there. It is non-invasive, and it's really a light test. It's called a medical, and it's called a psychological test, which can conjure up terrifying images, I think.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you can make your way to the doctor and the doctor assesses you visually as being medically fit and you can hold a conversation, you've pretty much passed the test. And obviously that will
Yes.
vary from doctor to doctor, but that's my experience of it.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely. Yeah. So you'll also need to bring your residency permit and your current license. You may also need a certificate to confirm your license is authentic. That may be a requirement as well. So that, again, is always something worth doing before you leave your country of citizenship. Now, you can read more information and you can actually commence the exchange process at imtonline.pt. But for the initial exchange, it will involve you presenting yourself at an IMT office and prepare yourself for a long day. Bring a flask, bring a good book, and maybe some sandwiches. And be Portuguese about it, because I think you might be there for a while. It can take time. Oh, sorry. And I also wanted to mention, I often get asked this question. A Portuguese license is a standard European Union approved license and can be used in most other countries around the world. I think there are one or two countries where there are exceptions, but I think there are exceptions to everybody's driving licenses. I personally have a Portuguese license. I've rented cars in the USA, Canada, Iceland, Ireland, France, Germany, without any problems whatsoever. So I don't know why, but the rumor seems to go around that a Portuguese license is not valid, or in some countries. That is not true. It's a perfectly normal, standard, European approved license. Leasing cars in Portugal. This is becoming more popular, and prices are coming down, which I think is starting to make it interesting. And it's actually available for new cars, and now even used cars are being put up for lease. They also call it renting or long-term renting in Portugal. There's not really any distinction between the different terms. The prices range from about 300 euros per month. Now, to be fair, that's not going to get you much of a car, but it will get you a car, and it will get you a new car. And if you think about it, 3,600 a year for everything except fuel is not necessarily a bad price. And then you have a new car every 3 or 4 years or whatever. So the prices are getting there. And I think leasing is starting to become an option compared to buying a car. Generally, you lease for 36 to 48 months. There will be a mileage limit, but you can increase the limit, although that might affect the actual cost of the fee, and there might be a corresponding increase in the monthly fee. Leases can be arranged without an initial entry fee, and the monthly fee will usually include all costs for maintenance, insurance, road tax, and tires. Fuel will not be included. The difficulty, however, for us foreigners relocating to Portugal is that our credit ratings may not be sufficient to qualify for a lease arrangement. Now, that can sometimes be overcome, particularly if you own a property, and there might be some other ways around it. But just be aware that that can be a problem, and that can catch people out. Most of us will be used to having a good credit rating because we're of a certain age, and that won't be the case when you start life in a new country. More and more car manufacturers are now offering lease or rental agreements, and often with an option to purchase at the end of the agreement for a balloon payment. If you check their websites and just Google Volvo.pt or Ford.pt or whatever it is you want, and you'll see the information on their websites. But leasing, I think, is one to watch. It's a developing. I think it's a relatively new concept in Portugal, but I think it's starting to gain a lot of traction now. So, what else? Well, in your car, you must carry your ID or your passport, your driving license, insurance certificate, registration document, which can also now be a plastic card if it's a newer car. And if your car needs an IPO certificate, that has to be in the car as well. You must also carry a warning triangle and a high-vis jacket. I always think it's worth keeping high-vis jackets for all the passengers, and the first aid kit, I think, are worth keeping in a car. Toll fees are payable on many motorways. There are probably 3 different ways you can pay, depending on the system. One could be the good old-fashioned way where you pull up at a gate and you collect a ticket, and you get to the other end and you hand in the ticket and they ask you for some money, or they swipe your card. The next way is that you go through an electronic camera, and it takes a photograph of your entry and exit to the toll, and then you go to a designated pay shop. Usually sort of news agents, that kind of stuff. You'll see pay shop sign above. You go in there, you give them the registration number of the vehicle, and they will tell you how much toll you need to pay. You have to do that within a certain time frame. So that can be a bit cumbersome. Or you can just register with an organization called Via Verde and get yourself an electronic tag, which you set in the windscreen, and then it's automatically charged to your bank account or your credit card every time you go through a toll. They also have express sections on the tolls that you can drive through. Usually you don't have to stop. They're also quite handy because they're available. A lot of public car parks will take Via Verde. So you drive up, you press the Via Verde button, the barrier opens, you're in, you're parked. When you leave, the fee is booked onto your card. So quite handy from that point of view as well. The police like to stage roadside checks for documentation. Back up to the first point above, they'll ask you for all those documents. They'll also will pull you for speeding offences. More and more you see them with these portable radar guns. You think they're drying their hair and they're not. So watch out for those. Fines can be on the spot, and the police get a percentage of the fine, so they are actually incentivized to issue fines. So be aware of that. And the other sort of new development is that radar cameras and average speed cameras are on the increase. I think I read there's something like 130 now around Portugal, which is quite a lot for the size of the country that we are. And I drove up to Porto last week, and I passed 3 areas where there were speed cameras. Or actually, one was an average speed camera, but those they didn't exist the last time I drove up to Porto, which was about 9 months ago, something like that. So they are really rolling them out now. You got to watch them. Fortunately, in my car, I've got a little gizmo that tells me when they're coming up, so that's quite handy.
And often the media are briefed, aren't they, about the new cameras and where they are? You can find out.
Yeah, you can find out, and I think I think the idea is that they're there to be preventative, and there will be signs up on the motorway saying "speed camera ahead."
Yeah.
So they're not trying to hide them or anything. But if you're not paying enough attention, you're just following the flow of the traffic, and boom, I got caught outside Lisbon, and I was just following the flow of the traffic, but it didn't stop them sending me a nice photograph of myself driving along at God knows what speed.
For your autograph. Yeah.
And would I please send them 90 euros or whatever it was?
Wow.
Okay, so that's the sort of the general overview of driving in Portugal. Now let's take a look at a little update of the cost of cars in Portugal. It's often said that cars are very expensive in Portugal. I don't believe that's true. And every time I do this, I seem to prove that. And so let's take another look. So today I went shopping, and I went shopping for 4 different cars, and I deliberately looked for cars that were available in Europe and the USA. I didn't want to buy a car that's in Europe that you couldn't get in the USA, so that we can all identify with the different cars. So I started with a Nissan Qashqai, which is a very popular car in Europe. It's called the Rogue in the USA. From what I've seen in the USA, it's also quite popular there. And I found these 3 cars, all with similar mileage, all the same year, 2020. And here are the different prices. And I've just shown a conversion into euros so we can get some comparison. So not a lot between it, really. 19,500, 19.2, 21.7 for a Nissan Qashqai Rogue. Then I found a Ford Fiesta. And again, quite similar in prices. This was a 2019 model, 12,000 euros in the US, 13,000 euros in the UK, surprisingly, and 12,200 euros in Portugal. Then I found a Toyota Corolla Hybrid, and I couldn't find one with a similar mileage in Portugal, so they must be quite popular. So I had to take one with a higher mileage. But price-wise, again, cheaper in the US, slightly more expensive in the UK, although that could be something to do with the mileage. And there's the price in Portugal. And then finally, I looked at a Kia Sportage, which I suppose we would term as a large car in Portugal. It's probably even mid-sized in the US. But it's quite a popular SUV car. And here again, we have the prices: 21,800 in the US, 23,000 in the UK, 26,900 in Portugal. So with those 4 sample cars, put that together, and the total of all of those cars to buy in Portugal is 84,750 euros. Now, obviously, this is before any negotiation or anything like that. I'm just taking them at face value. In the USA, those same 4 cars with similar mileage would be 12% less than Portugal. In the UK, they would be 2% less than Portugal. So I think when we last looked at this from memory, I think the USA was roughly around the same differential. I think UK, the cars were slightly more expensive when I looked at them last time. Now they're sort of slightly under. So car prices seem to be moving favorably in the UK. But generally speaking, you're talking about 12% more on a car from USA to Portugal, and maybe 2% on a car from UK compared to Portugal. However, Portuguese cars are likely to have a lower specification than their USA or UK equivalents. When cars are first sold here, there is a unique sales tax called an ISV tax, which is applied to new cars. And so the dealers will often try and cut out some of the equipment in order to reduce the price of the new car. It might be that it won't have an alarm or something like that. But it doesn't mean that they're not going to be sort of missing anything important. They're going to have all the stuff that you actually need in a car, but it might not have a sunroof or a moonroof or whatever you call it. Most cars in Europe will have a better miles per gallon performance than USA cars. USA cars often have bigger engines than European cars, but the European cars, just because they're smaller engines, doesn't mean they perform any less. And sometimes they actually perform better than the American equivalents, in my personal experience. So don't let that worry you. And the other thing then is that the Portuguese cars will hold their value more than USA or UK cars. Now, a good example of that, we bought a small Nissan from new 6 years ago. We bought it, and I think we paid just over 20,000 euros for this car. And we sold it after 5 years with 65,000 kilometers on the clock. And we sold it back to the dealer for more than 15,000 euros, We probably could have got more for it if we tried to sell it some other way. But what that showed me was that that car cost €1,000 a year to run, which is not bad in my view. I know from having two daughters in the USA, they can buy a nearly new car in the USA, run it for 5 years, and it's worth nothing when they're done with it. They virtually have to start again. Cars here hold their value, so that's good to know. So, for all of the things that I've just mentioned, we have a great group of partners who can help you through the different areas, starting with the Automobile Club of Portugal, which are like the Automobile Association in the UK. I'm not sure what they're called in the US, but they can help you with the matriculation of a vehicle into Portugal, what the costs will be, and so on. And they can also assist with driving licenses and other legal matters. There are also some other benefits of joining the Automobile Club, discounts on fuel and so on. Our wonderful partners, Global International Relocation, they're the people to talk to about shipping and importing vehicles into Portugal. I said it's expensive, but if you want to put it to the test, those are the people to talk to. And they also have a service where they can help you then matriculate the vehicle. Matriculation means changing the vehicle to the Portuguese specification. Tonight, I'm going to introduce you to our newest partner in this group, João, and hopefully he's waiting there in the background, and we'll bring him on in a moment and tell you a little bit about what he does, but I'll come back to that in 1 second. We have Winsurance for all options and costs of vehicle insurance. I think many of you will know Nuno Mendes. He's famous for being on our webinars. And then finally, when you need to transfer the money to buy a car, we work very closely with Spartan FX. And I was talking to Sarah Spartan earlier today, and she gave me a really good example. One of our members who had arranged to buy a car and went to transfer the money on a Friday evening or something, and they couldn't transfer the money because the bank in the US had a limit on how much they could transfer, and so they could not get the money across in time to buy the car and had to go and rent a car and go into all kinds of fuss and bother about it. So again, that's something to think about, is having the funds properly here, ready and available in Portugal, and Spartan can help you with all of that. All these people can be found in our business directory on our website, or drop us an email to admin@expatsportugal.com, and we will introduce you and confirm any benefits due. In some cases, we have discounts for our premium members with some of these organizations, and we will arrange that for you. So if you want to talk to any of them, or you want any more help, just drop us an email at admin@expatsportugal.com. So finally, then, I want to introduce João Amaral. I hope I've pronounced his name properly. He'll soon tell me. And he is now available to assist our members with new and used car purchases, helping to determine the right car for you based on your requirements and budget. And this is interesting because we have cars in Europe that you don't have in North America, and vice versa, of course. But you have French cars are not, as far as I know, are not easily available in the USA. French cars are very popular here, cars like Renault and Citroën and Peugeot. Czech cars, Skoda, Spanish, Seat. So we have cars that you won't be familiar with. So it's good to talk to someone in the know who can sort of give you some ideas of what cars are reliable, and maybe tell you about cars that you don't know about and how similar they might be to cars in your part of the world. He can source the car to your requirements, your specification and budget, negotiate the best price, ensure the vehicle is properly working, the mileage and specifications are correct, arrange the warranty, arrange for the car to be registered in your name. And I mentioned earlier on that is something that you have to do. When you buy a car in Portugal, when a car is first new in Portugal, it is registered and plated, and that plate stays with the car for the lifetime of the car. So when you buy that car, you have to transfer your ownership to that car. Zhao can arrange that for you. Other dealers will charge a fee for that. He can also arrange for you to collect the car, or better still, maybe to have it delivered anywhere in mainland Portugal. We were discussing this afternoon, and I hadn't got mainland Portugal in, and we thought, well, what happens if it's the Azores? And then we thought, oh, we better put mainland Portugal. So we covered that one now. And there's no cost for you for all of the above. So I would now like to introduce Xiao, if you have him there, Carl.
I believe so. João Amaral, good evening to you. Boa tarde. Muito prazer. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you all. I'm just going to talk a little bit about me and my background on cars. To be honest, I have born with cars. I born in a family that loves cars, collection cars, classic cars, rally cars, and things like that. I have made a degree in marketing, okay? And since I finished the degree, I always worked in cars. So in the tire business, in the car wash business and detailing, and now in the car selling, okay? So I think I know all the business very well, and I will be glad to help all the members that need help with my expertise to find them the best car for their needs. Their
Wonderful.
needs or their can be the business needs too. Okay.
Good to know. All right. Well, thanks, João. And you've already got a really good testimonial that's come from one of our community members tonight. Dwight, I'll come to a lot of the questions and comments and suggestions in just a moment, but let me just pick this out because you're here with us, João, introducing yourself. Dwight. Okay. It's the Casa Miller speaking here. I bought both of our cars through João Amaral of Roriz Car and highly recommend him. He was integral to our finding the right car and gave us superb service. He's about establishing a relationship with you, not making a quick sale. We were amazed to have this car buying service. Now he is a friend too. And as Jerry was reading through, I'm sure you'll be happy with that, João.
Very happy.
As Jerry was reading through that list of things, there are so many things to consider, and this is a brilliant service to be offered to the Expats Portugal business directory. The things that can be done now on people's behalf by you when it comes to buying a car, because it is pretty complicated. So thanks, Gail, for that. And we bought my lovely 2012 Mini Cooper diesel. And Dwight recently as well. So it sounds like you can locate dream cars for people. Can I ask you what you drive? What does the man who finds cars for other people drive himself?
By myself, I have a Suzuki Vitara.
Right.
Convertible.
Oh, very nice.
To travel around the beach with my little boy.
Wonderful.
Okay. My trip car is a Ford Focus.
Yeah.
Station wagon.
Yeah.
And my service car here in the company is a Renault Clio.
Very good. Okay, some clues there as to what João likes to drive. So anything else you'd like to add, João? It's great to meet you tonight, and this is a fantastic service that's being offered now by Expats Portugal. Anything else from you this evening?
No, from me. If anyone has some questions that I can help, I will be glad to help.
Wonderful. Well, stay where you are then. Lovely to meet you, and thanks for being here this evening. Jerry, did you want to conclude with your presentation this evening?
No, I'm all done. I'm stopping for breath, and very happy. João and I will sort of take questions now. I'm very happy to deal with all of that.
Fantastic. So let's do that. And as usual, Jerry, as you might imagine, great presentation. Thank you very much. Lots of questions come up because it's a very, there are so many subjects within this subject, basically, aren't there? So Alicia was first, and I'll get through as many of these as I can so we don't have too long a recording. I'll cut it off by, I think, maybe about 8:30, and then stick around, João, Jerry, everybody who's got questions that don't get answered in the next 10 or 12 minutes. We'll make sure we get to them in our post-recording session. So Alicia asked, these are good general questions, by the way. Would you recommend an EV if you had only access to public chargers? That's a good question, and probably for you, Jerry, I think.
Well, I have an EV and I do have a home charger, but I try not to use it. I try to use the public charging because of the way it can charge the business and so on. And I don't have a big problem using the public charging. Pretty much everywhere I go, I know where I can get on a charger. It's not expensive. There's a wonderful system called Mio, MIIO. Highly recommend that you get their app. Download the app anyway. It doesn't cost anything. You can
Agora
see.
tenho aqui 10 minutos, o quarto de hora.
Oh, hold on a minute there, João.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No worries. We know
You
you're a
can
busy
see
man.
where you can see where the charging stations are around the country and how powerful they are. Are they fast chargers or slow or whatever? You only need one card for pretty much any charging service. So that's really good. So I would suggest to download the app and then you can get a good feel for where the chargers might be in the area that you're thinking to live.
So that's the important question here, isn't it, with Alicia, is where are you going to be? Where do you intend to live if you've only got access to public chargers? Thanks for that, Jerry. We might go back to João for this because I'm sure you'll have a view on this, João. Most reliable car models in Portugal. Is that such a big issue anymore? I mean, with new cars, they're all guaranteed anyway, aren't they? It's not such a big deal anymore, is it, with this great sort of rivalry between the makers of cars and how reliable they all are?
For me, in my opinion, 80% of the problems with the cars goes from the owners. Okay,
Right.
bad services. Okay, bad treatments. Okay, it's true that there are cars that have more problems than others, but today the reliability of the car for me depends on the owner.
Yeah.
We have some problems with some engines, like the 1.2 used in the French brands like Peugeot, Citroën, Opel, Fiat. They are from the Stellantis. Okay, they have a very bad problem, and it's a construction problem. But besides that, the other things, normally the problems are from the owners and not from the car.
Well, great answer. And you'll talk to people, won't you? There'll be a brand like an Alfa Romeo owner, and people will say, "Oh, they're so unreliable," and the person will say, "Well, I've never had a problem with my particular car." It does
It's
depend
a
on
very reliable brand.
Yeah.
Very reliable.
So there we go.
Really?
Things have things have changed, right?
Yeah.
Next question, then. Alicia,
We are not in
please.
the 80s now. No more.
Some people need to be reminded of that, don't they, João?
Yeah.
Top
I
three.
have to say, I've never had a problem with an Alfa Romeo. I've never had an Alfa Romeo, but I've never had a problem with one either.
Like so many of us here, I suspect. Thank you. And yeah, and neither a Rolls Royce or several other brands we've never had any problems with.
Same thing. Yeah.
Top three choices in a 15,000 euro used car. Now, it sounds like Alicia asked this question before you were introduced. That's the perfect introduction to you, isn't it? Alicia should really get in touch and say, this is my budget, and give you a few more other directions and preferences. And then you can say, can't you, for 15,000, we can do you X, Y, or Z.
We need more information. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, that when it comes to the top three choices of 15,000, you're along with the other criteria, you're going to be able to give Alicia a list.
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
Yes,
brilliant. Okay. Does Portugal have something like consumer reports for auto ratings and reliability? So going back to the 80s, I suppose, and the which reports and so on, how do you find out, generally speaking, which are the most reliable?
We don't have the reports like US have. Okay. Miles have shown me the US reports. Okay. We don't have that here. Okay. We know by our expertise, by talking with people and with other dealers. We don't have rates on the reliability.
I get you. Reliability, absolutely. And yeah, talk to an expert. And it just so happens we have one here tonight.
Yeah.
Okay. Dwight or Gail, go on, Jerry.
Yeah, those reports are available in the UK, and they will be the same cars, except the steering wheel will be on the different side of the car. Otherwise, they'll be pretty much the same, and they'll be in English. So personally, when I want to look at, if I want to read up on a car, I'll read up on it from a UK review and UK sort of specifications and so on. And then I'll compare that with the Portuguese one. But if you want to check reliability, stuff like that, they are available on UK websites.
Very good. Thanks, Jerry. Matthew B already saying here, we'll definitely be using this service. It's such a good introduction to what's being offered by Expats Portugal. Great to have you here tonight, Joao. Scrolling back to the many questions that we've got here in the chat tonight. Thanks, everybody, for being here, and thanks for all these wonderful questions. We found a significant saving on our auto insurance. I think this is Gail again, being members of ACP. And of course, as Jerry said, they are in the list of people who can help you here as an Expats Portugal member, including discounts for fuel. Very good. You're mentioning your Mini Cooper diesel there. Your road tax approximately €158 a year. Second car, 2019 Volvo petrol, a little under €190. Thank you for those stats, all very helpful. And I suspect a lot of these questions will be good conversation starters on the forum as well. So do pop these questions over on the forum and ask other people who've bought cars and help other people who've yet to buy them. As suspected, Jerry, a little bit more clarification on driving license exchange. 90 days over 60 years from what date? That's from when you arrive, right? You've got 90 days from becoming a resident, and then...
From becoming a resident, yes, from the date your residency is issued. Yeah. You've got 90 days. You only have to make the application. You don't have to have the actual exchange, but you have to have made the application within 90 days of the date of residency.
Yes, and then be prepared to wait, because sometimes the process can take over a year for some people and less for others, but it does vary, and doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it. If you want to drive in Lisbon, that might be grounds to question your sanity. Tom, that is harsh. You can get used to driving in Lisbon. It's just different. That's how I would describe personally the driving here. It is different, and you need to get on the roads and try for yourself, and you'll soon get used to the driving style here in Portugal if you practice. Is the 90-day period, back to the exchange, is the 90-day period to exchange American driver's license, but you don't yet have the residency permit? Does the 90 days start after getting the residence permit? Yes, once you're a resident, Andrew. Yes, clarifying there, as Jerry just did. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you have 185 days without the residency, and then you have the 90 days from the date the residency is issued. If you haven't got it by then, you shouldn't be here.
Yes, and you've got some explaining to do.
You've got some explaining to do, yes.
Yeah, okay. Jose, always helpful. Thank you so much for being here again tonight. US residents may wish to know that once you have your residency and apply to exchange your US driver's license for a Portuguese license, you must surrender your US driver's license, and you'll be issued a piece of paper. This is good to know, isn't it? Well, that once you've surrendered your driving license of your country of origin, you'll have a piece of paper instead, or certainly that was my experience as well. It's quite baffling. You go to the comments and have a look at this, because as Jose is being very helpful as usual there tonight, finishing this particular comment with saying, so during that time you'll be a prisoner in Portugal, but there are worse places to be confined to, looking on the bright side.
Well, yeah, not quite. You are right. You get a piece of paper which effectively is a temporary license. And that's fine in Portugal, and the police will recognize that, and you're good to go. That's no problem. But if you try and go to another country and present that piece of paper, they're not going to accept it as a driving license. In that situation, you need to go to someone like ACP and get an IDP, an international driver's permit. So you give them the temporary document, and they will relieve you of €25 and give you an IDP. And with the IDP, the international driver's permit, you can rent a car in another country.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Jose and Jerry there, fantastic. That's a really good hack, isn't it? And something really good to know about. ACP, great organization to belong to. Thank you, Ken. Some toll roads are electronic only, which is a very good advert for the Via Verde system, of course. Is it possible to get a Portuguese credit card ahead of immigrating and use it to pay balances on time to start establishing a credit rating in Portugal? Laronda, you've been very helpful, and perhaps we'll pick it up and run with it after the end of the recording. There are some other general questions that I think will be quite useful to pop on the recording. Tom's asking, do you have a spare pair of glasses in your car if you require them, or do you have to have a spare pair of glasses in your car? Some countries ask for that. Is that the case here, Jerry? Do you know?
I'm not sure. What I would suggest is that when you go for the medical test, don't wear your glasses.
Very good. Hack right there. Thank you, Jerry. And thanks to everybody for the continuing conversation, which we'll return to, I think, after we've concluded the recording about anything or anyone not unclear about the exchange. We'll chat more about that after the end of the recording. In Portugal, will you lose your driver's license if you have too many speeding violations? And if yes, how many violations does it take? I'll ask you, João, not because I suspect you might be that guy who might do something like that, but generally speaking, what happens in this
Luckily,
situation?
I don't. But
There's a limit, is there?
We have a system that is in points, okay?
Mhm.
Everyone starts with 12 points. And you can lose 1 point or 2 or 3, depending on the thing that you do wrong, okay? Yeah. If you go with alcohol, you can lose 3 or 4 points, okay? When you lose all the points, you are unable to drive. I think it's 2 years, and then you have to take the driver's license from the beginning again.
Wow. Okay. So yes,
you don't recover your driver's license. You have to get a new one.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you for that. There you go. That was for Diana there. Very good. Via Verde says, Jose, is the only way to go. You can also use Via Verde. Yeah, there are loads of other perks and benefits of having the Via Verde system, which you can research at your leisure on their website and talk to others, of course, who've got that system like Jerry has as well. That's probably another conversational thread in the forum there. We'll talk more about leasing after the recording concludes, Laronda. That's a great question there. And I think what we'll finish with tonight is the classic, Jerry, which George is asking. Why compare with the USA and UK? Why not with France, Germany, and especially Spain? One is more likely to go to these countries if one looks for a second-hand car, as they are in the EU, hence no extra VAT and technical requirements, therefore identical, rather than US and UK. Why? Maybe João and Jerry will have something to say on this. Why don't people just go to neighboring Spain, buy a nice cheap car and drive it back, Jerry?
If you could do that, we'd all be doing it, and
right.
João would be out of business, right? You can't. Basically, you still have to import it. You still have to pay the additional taxes. And you still have to matriculate the car.
Yep. Yeah. So we like the way you're thinking, George, but it doesn't work like that. João, in conclusion, would you like to add something to that? Portugal shouldn't be doing this, should they, as a member of the EU superstate? But it persists, doesn't it?
We are every year we are ticketed from the European Union.
Yeah.
For this, but the cost for the state, it's less than what they take in the taxes. Okay.
Yeah.
So we continue to do it. Yes. Unfortunately,
it's traffic flow and cash flow all at the same time for the government there, and not likely to stop anytime soon. They'll just keep paying the fine, which is less than the revenue they get from doing it. So thank you very much, João. Thank you much, Jerry. We're getting appreciation from Alicia as well. Obrigado for your answers, Jerry, Carl, and João. Let's go for some more after we've concluded the recording here for the webinar. Find out how to become a premium member of Expats Portugal at expatsportugal.com, where you can find out about all the benefits, including and seeing again the list of people that Jerry talked about and getting some preferential treatment and benefits and discounts with those people. So for the time being, thanks, Jerry. Excellent presentation. And thanks, João, for introducing yourself tonight. Let's have a little bit of a Q&A behind the scenes now.